So my story really begins with me growing up in Columbus, Ohio, where there's a good mix of city and cornfields, but mostly corn. And starting out in high school, I was actually voted class clown, believe it or not. Didn't really take a lot of things all that seriously. School being definitely one of those things. Really a goon of goons, if you will. But it was never enough that I would let my grades sink or, I was failing classes. I was getting A's and B's. If I remember correctly, I think it was like a C in chemistry or something like that. For the longest time, I thought about joining the military, making that my career, seeing how that went. In retrospect, traveling the world, jumping out of planes and blowing stuff up, what high school boy my age wouldn't have liked that? And my dad was a Marine, so growing up, I'd see all the cool pictures of the places he'd been, the people he'd met, and he also brought back some cool souvenirs from overseas. So I was like, maybe I can make my own story and do something like that. And as for my parents, they didn't go to college. They had a high school education. My dad worked in a factory making dog food, and my mom worked for the Department of Transportation in customer service for a while. But nonetheless, they were supportive of whatever path I wanted to take. As long as I was progressing and, being an upstanding citizen, I think they were going to support me through whatever I chose to do. In high school, just to preface college, I had no idea how to study. I got most of my work done at school just so then that way I could have time for sports, or when I got off work teaching swim lessons and lifeguarding or working at Tim Hortons, then I could just go home and sleep and just wake up the next day and not have to worry about anything because I got everything done at school. I took the ACT my junior year of high school and I got a 24 or 25. It was nothing crazy. I took it one time, didn't want to take it again. And I only say it's nothing crazy because going into a science major in undergrad, it felt like everybody had a 30 or higher, and that is kind of intimidating. And especially when you're in pre-med, everybody's pretty competitive in undergrad, so you're kind of looking at people with like 36 on their ACTs, and you're like, man, they're about to smoke me on this exam, which, especially my freshman year of college, they definitely did. And it is very intimidating when you have a 24, 25 and they got like a 34, 36, and you're just kind of sitting there like, man, am I really cut out for this? Especially if you were thinking that you weren't enough to begin with, and then you start comparing yourself to others, it's kind of just game over from there. You let self-doubt take over and you start really doubting yourself a lot. At least I did. I learned that you got to stand out, really be yourself. Otherwise, you'll drown in needless self-doubt and never find out who you actually are. But being a first-generation college student, my parents didn't know very much about applying to college, and neither did I. A lot of information that I got really came from my friends or other people that I saw at my high school that were really smart, and I was like, what are they doing? Should I do that too? And it wasn't really the most researched thing. I was just kind of like, this is I guess what you need to do for a really good life, which turned out to really not be the best thing because I missed out on a ton of scholarships because I was just unaware of the deadlines and how hard these deadlines were. And by a ton, I mean full tuition scholarships that were need-based, and I would have been right there for them, but I missed a lot of deadlines that I did not know about until I had already applied. Anyways, I was ready for the college experience, and I was ready to see where my path took me. I knew I wanted to do something in science, and at the time, I thought I wanted to work on nuclear reactors or, battleships, maybe even Chernobyl if I could. So I did my first semester in physics, which did not last very long. 2 weeks before school started, I switched my major over to biology, which the 4-year path for biology looked way more intriguing than the 4-year path for physics, which included thermodynamics and calc-based physics. And while physics was very practical, I kind of realized that I wanted to work with people rather than numbers. And while that thought was virtuous and dandy, I had to make sure I could accomplish that first, which I wasn't. I completely bombed my first semester at the University of Cincinnati. Like I sub 3.0 GPA bombed. Something I had never done before in my entire life. I got way too involved in the social aspect of college, and I didn't take the time to refine my non-existent study skills from high school. It could have been a lot better in retrospect if I had just used my resources Really just took the time to learn about myself and not been so hard-headed. But hindsight's always 2020. So moving into spring semester, I told myself I would buckle down and I would really get a hold of my grades, and I was going to get a 4.0 this semester. I was learning as much as I could about how the brain works, how learning works. I not really thought about learning. Things just kind of came to me. I didn't know how to force my brain to work. I read this book called The Science of Learning that was recommended to me by my bio professor, and it honestly just breaks down how you learn, how your brain works. It's all study based and it breaks it all down for you. And I honestly have to thank that book a lot, and I have to thank my professor a lot, because I think that's the only reason I even got close to where I am now. And I still got clapped that spring semester. It was slightly better, oh so very slightly. Like a 3.1 maybe, but I still did not feel like I was ready for college by any means. Actually, I was far from ready. I took that first summer between first and second year of college, and I read that book, The Science of Learning. And I realized that I didn't actually read it that well the first time through, and the second time through, I really realized what I was missing. I absorbed as much as I could from that book, and moving into my fall semester of sophomore year, I had so many doubts, so many insecurities about my intelligence. It wasn't even funny. I had no idea whether or not I was even capable of completing the schoolwork or even making it through undergrad. You really just have a lot of self-doubt, and I really didn't know if I was even capable of achieving anything I wanted to. Especially when you look at the statistics of people coming out of a situation like mine, going to college wasn't exactly the most traveled route. I gave myself an ultimatum at probably one of the worst times, when I was in the infamous organic chemistry. Probably one of the hardest classes that pre-meds take. I told myself I would drop out of college if I didn't get an A in the class. And that was mostly because I needed an A to remain remotely competitive in any field of medicine that I wanted to pursue. And one thing I just want to mention here is, if you don't have a backup for something, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. You can have all the drive you want, and I think that is awesome. But honestly, life does not turn out as you plan sometimes, and you have to be able to adapt accordingly. But I had to be real with myself and my timeline for what I had in store for my life, which meant double, even triple dipping into both PA, NP, and nursing prerequisite courses, because I had zero idea what life had in store for me. I had to put a lot of things on hold that semester, especially socially, but thankfully I had some awesome people around me, and they understood my mission and they understood their assignment. And honestly, I wouldn't trade them for the world. After that semester, going into the spring, I actually started to do productive things like volunteer, look for research opportunities, and that was mostly because school was figured out then, and I was comfortable going outside and trying new things and adding things to my schedule, because now I believed in my time management skills. And of course, not without some slip-ups on a couple exams here and there, because, I'm human. And so I eventually started to feel a lot more confident in myself academically, and this prompted me to go visit my pre-professional advisor, to which having a low GPA and then doing great, you still have a low GPA overall. So what they're pretty much going to tell you is that you shouldn't pursue this, because on paper you don't look like you're going to be competitive for medical school, or you're going to be competitive for anything that you're pursuing. So I guess in short, my advisor told me that I shouldn't pursue medical school, that I should probably go be like a massage therapist, or so. It was something super unrelated to medicine at all, nothing that I wanted to do remotely. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not that type of person. And I don't care what you say. Moving on to my senior year, I decided I was competitive for medical school. I didn't care what my advisors had said. I saw that my grades were on a significant uptrend, and that if you looked at the uptrend, that you could easily see that I was improving myself academically year after year after year in college. I had scored okay on my MCAT. I had plenty of extracurriculars on my application, but I think my saving grace was I got an email from one of my friends. If there's ever a reason to have a ton of friends or make a ton of friends or just be a decent human being, or just who knows, but you never know who's going to help you get into medical school, essentially. One of my friends had sent me a link to the Summer Scholars Medical School Bootcamp program. And how I read it, and this is totally my opinion, prove yourself worthy of medical school by living and experiencing the life of a medical student. Which I was thinking, like, yeah, I could do that. That's easy. Sure. This is like my time to shine. Plus a guaranteed interview at the end. My thoughts were, if I'm going to shine anywhere, it's going to be during the interview and in person. I had applied to Summer Scholars, and luckily I was accepted. Couldn't have been more ecstatic. Going into the program, we kind of knew in the back of our heads what was on the line the whole time: getting into medical school. Which you might kind of think everybody there would be like cutthroat and trying to tear each other down so then they look better than everybody, which was not the case at all. Everybody there was so supportive, so happy to just be there, be with everybody else. You know, misery loves company. But I'll be honest with you, that wasn't even a miserable time for me. It was just an awesome time of growth and experiencing what I was getting myself into, or what I was about to get myself into, what I'm currently getting myself into. During Summer Scholars, we took the same exams, the same classes, and essentially lived the exact same life as a medical student for about 4 weeks. Except the best part is, we got paid, and we're not paying to do it. And at the end of it, you get to know the admissions staff pretty well and the faculty teaching you. So you spend so much time with them that eventually your conversations just end up like normal everyday conversations. And you know, everybody's just a person and you're just trying to get to know them as best you can. And they're trying to get to know you as best you can because they care about you. You care about them. I'd say the entire time it was super chill, and that same energy carried into the interview at the end of the summer, which is funny because even though I knew everyone pretty well and they knew me pretty well, I was still super nervous. I was so nervous for that interview that I was literally shaking and I had the nervous poops. It was a whole scene. I'd just be glad you weren't there to see it. But really, you get in there, you have your first interviewer, you settle in, you maybe stumble over your words a few times, but overall, you get through it. Then you get into your next interviewer and then you're like, okay, now we know, now we go. I think the whole interview was probably like an hour, but to be completely honest with you, it felt like 2 minutes. And I wish I was kidding when I say that because the time literally flew by. And after that interview, about a week later, I got a call from our admissions saying that I got in. I dropped my other applications to all the other schools just so I could save a little bit of money. And I had still applied to the other programs because I wasn't sure if I was going to get into this one. I had from July 2020 till August of 2021 to essentially do whatever I want. Work, go have fun, and that's exactly what I did. Essentially spent a year waiting for medical school to start. To be honest, I really cannot be thankful enough for the Summer Scholars program. And being able to know that I got into medical school in July was amazing because then I didn't have the stress of having to wait till November, December, sometimes even March or February to realize like, hey, am I getting into medical school or no? So that's my story to medical school. Thank you for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. Literally anything is possible. Literally anything is possible that you put your mind to. Because if you want it, don't give up. Maybe take a break, go back to the drawing board, but don't give up. Like, subscribe, and stay frosty.
Nice job. Bravo.